An absolutely jam-packed weekend in the NHL means your Monday episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast as equally as jam-packed. Panthers-Bruins series recap, same thing for the Stars and Avs. And ooh, baby, we got a Game 7 going on. Let's get right to it.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The NHL playoffs are popping off, and so is the Monday episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. I am joined, as always, by my distinguished co-host, Mr. Steele Roden, and on this side of the microphone, it's your boy, Big Flip Livingstone. Shout out to the everydayers holding us down, making us your first listen every single day, Monday through Friday. We're here for y'all, recapping all of the NHL news, betting angles, fantasy hockey angles that you need to know in a tight, nice 30-minute show. Steele, on today's show, my goodness me, so much to get to. Panthers, the better team, in 6 games, take care of the Bruins. The Stars, the better team, take care of the Avalanche in 6 games. We'll talk about each series, what went down, some fantasy angles, and of course, the big, pivotal, best 2 words in sports, Game 7. Tonight, Oilers and Canucks. Steele, another awesome series between 2 Canadian teams, but I think the one is much better than the other. So we'll get there. Monday, same game parlays. It's going to be a loaded episode. So right over to you, my friend, as always. Look, the Bruins firepower, this is what we talked about at the jump. All of the angles that were covered, it came true. Not enough offense, not enough shots on net, and the better team advances.
Yeah, and sorry, are we talking about the Panthers, or are we talking about
Panthers-Bruins is where I was starting, yeah.
Sorry, I thought I heard the other matchup, but yeah, the better team moves forward onto the Eastern Conference Finals. This is their second consecutive season doing so. I mean, this is just an absolute bandwagon of a team at this point, and they've structured themselves to be a cup contender for many years to come. But you know, especially losing Brad Marchand in this series, like we saw with Austin Matthews and William Nylander in the first round series. They lost their best player, and it hurt them. It hurt them overall in the long run. You know, there were times where David Pastrnak just was absolutely invisible out there. You know, they were not getting any depth scoring. You know, from Jake DeBrusk or Pavel Zacha, Geeky, all these guys who were playing pretty well in the regular season, didn't really live up against this team. Like I said, is a juggernaut right now in the postseason in the Florida Panthers. And I got to say, I mean, I've said it before. I'll say it once again. Paul Maurice is my favorite coach in the NHL. He's the best coach in the NHL. So he keeps it as real as possible, especially in his post-game and pre-game interviews, whatever it is. I loved his comments. I loved his statements after the game about, you know, the series, the matchup, the expectations of what you're going to get out of a Bruins-Panthers playoff series. And we all loved it because it was just super physical. It was super gritty. Yeah. There was a lot of goal scoring, obviously. The goaltenders balled out a little bit. So you got a little bit of everything in that series, but the better team comes out on top. And, you know, again, led by Matthew Tkachuk, led by Alexander Barkov, who wins the Selke Trophy once again. Yeah. I mean, their team is just super good. And rightfully so, because of how great this team has been structured by the GM and the front office, and how it's being coached right now by Paul Maurice and his assistant staff.
Shout out to Bill Zito.
Yeah, Bill Zito's been absolutely killing it, just with like Jim Nill, and we'll talk about the Dallas Stars as well later in this episode. They move on in their series, but hey, look, we're going to save the Eastern Conference Finals. We're going to save the Western Conference Finals for probably Tuesday, so tomorrow's episode, really, because Game 1 of the New York Rangers and Florida Panthers take place on Wednesday. So we're going to be looking forward to breaking down the X factors, the best bets, the previews, predictions, everything you need to know about the Eastern Conference Finals and Western Conference Finals. But yeah, better team in the Eastern Conference moves on in that series between the Panthers and the Boston Bruins.
And before I just very quickly get to Jeremy Swayman, who I think is absolutely catapulting his draft stock through the roof, much like Evan Bouchard out west. And yeah, we'll break down the Eastern and Western Conference Finals. But in terms of how the Bruins couldn't get it done, Steele, when you don't put pucks on net, this isn't rocket science here. They didn't put enough pucks on Sergei Bobrovsky. I think I mentioned it to you maybe on or off air that I don't think Bob was tested very much in this series. They hadn't had to rely on Bob like they did on the last run. And very much like last season, Steele, an amazing regular season by the Boston Bruins, which you alluded to, goes out the door. And there are a number of UFAs and RFAs on the board for this team. Jake DeBrusk, JVR, Pat Maroon, Danton Heinen, Derek Forbort, Kevin Shattenkirk, and of course, Jeremy Swayman. There should be, I think, a little bit of changing of the guard here in terms of this team needs some fresh blood. It definitely needs a little bit more depth in their offensive, forward group. And I know all of these things are easier said than done, salary cap and whatnot. But I think the Boston Bruins need to really take a look at how the last two regular seasons have been squandered in the playoffs. And look, I know they got to the second round here and against a very good Florida team. But I just want to say that if you're a Boston Bruins fan, moving forward, I don't think the future is as bright as maybe it was after a regular season where they set, all those records. So I just got to poke the hole in that. The lack of goal scoring is a fact, and I'll leave it at this. And then we can, go wherever you want to go. Maybe we start talking Avs Stars because I'm ready to go here. Is the Cats' road dominance. This Florida team went on a heater during the regular season on the road. I know they reeled off like 10 or 11 road wins or something like that. And they get it done on the road once again. And these kind of themes here pop up, Steele. Special teams, ability to win on the road. Look at what the Dallas Stars just did to the Avs. Took all 3 road games in that series, and the better team won in that one too. However, I just wanted to highlight that these themes come up in the playoffs. They might sound played out, but it happens, and that's how teams go on deep runs, and that's just what this Florida Panthers team is doing in back-to-back years.
And that's something, again, especially going from last year to this year, again, we've said it multiple times, but losing Bergeron, losing Krejci, losing a few of those guys, those veteran presence, it's a huge factor, and that's why we were very shocked to see the Boston Bruins do so well in the regular season. And then again, just come into the postseason and it's the Maple Leafs. They've had their number for many years now. Obviously, again, no excuses on the Maple Leaf side of things, but they didn't really have a full roster of their superstars the entire 7-game series. Their Matthews was out 2 games, Nylander out for the first 3 games. I know there was other guys missing out from injuries as well. So, and again, Sheldon Keefe said it. The Maple Leafs have a tendency of making goalies look like absolute superstars out there, and we did that.
Swayman was good though, but I hear you.
Swayman was unbelievable, but we still made him look very good, and that's why his draft stock value is going up. But then you go to this playoff series against the Panthers, they put a lot more pucks on net. There's the 5-1 game, there's a 6-1 game. You know what I mean? So he was allowing a lot more goals. The Panthers were playing they were playing a way better game than what the Maple Leafs were giving the Boston Bruins in the first round. But it's just a little bit weird to go from what we saw in the regular season this year to not being able to score goals, both from the Boston Bruins and Toronto Maple Leafs perspective, because they struggled to score goals when the playoff starts. That's just exactly what happened. And, it hurt them because they were, again, no depth scoring, not a lot of center depth there. So better team moved on.
Florida held them to 1 goal on 16 power play chances as well, Steele. So there it is once again. Special teams is a theme. The rest of this episode theme, straight fire. We're going to be talking about Stars Avs right around the break because, Steele, I've been hard on this Stars team for a long time. Actually, from the very beginning of the season, check the bet ticker. And we're going to talk about Game 7, Oilers and Canucks. I'm really fired up about this one, Steele. I'm excited for your take as well because for me, it's clear cut. That will go right in the same vein as Monday's same game parlays. Today's episode is brought to you by Policygenius. Policygenius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace that saves you time and money so you can provide your family with financial safety starting today. Policygenius brings you life insurance policies that start at $292 per year for $1 million in coverage. Some options offer same-day approval, so you can avoid unnecessary medical exams. Steele, you know how I feel about those medical exams. Check life insurance off your to-do list with Policygenius. Head to policygenius.com/LockedOnNHL or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/LockedOnNHL.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to hit the subscribe, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. And if you haven't yet, you got to make the switch over to Locked On Sports Today. Are you still watching on Fox Sports or ESPN? You have to turn down the volume with all that shouting. Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, news, opinions, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Fire TV channel app on Amazon, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Once again, thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode with Flip and I, continuing the postseason coverage of all these matchup series that ended and continuing over the weekend. The Dallas Stars moving on to the Western Conference Finals. They await one of either the Vancouver Canucks or Edmonton Oilers, and we'll talk about that Game 7 series at the end of this episode. But, I mean, what Dallas has done so far this season, what Dallas has done so far this playoffs as well, there hasn't been another team in NHL history, I believe, that has defeated the last two Stanley Cup champions, and that's the Vegas Golden Knights and the Colorado Avalanche. Now they get it done both in a Game 7 and a Game 6. They go on to the Western Conference Finals. I believe no matter what, they're going to have home ice advantage. I believe, did they finish higher than Vancouver in the regular season?
I think
pretty
so.
I believe they did.
I don't know for sure,
I'm
but
pull that up right now.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because here, let me take it away then, because it's a very similar situation when you take a look at how the teams were dispatched. The Colorado Avalanche came in terms of in the East and in the West here. The Colorado Avalanche entered this series, Steele, as with the best home record in the NHL this season. And the Dallas Stars beat them in all 3 games on home ice. And the Dallas Stars were the best road team in the NHL in the regular season. So I just got to throw that out there right away. But you got that stat up, or what are you saying?
Yeah, the Dallas Stars will have home ice advantage.
Giddy up, because also, Steele, we knew that this loss of Nichushkin was a backbreaker, but also this team at times struggled to score goals, which doesn't make any sense. Yes, let's give some credit to a Dallas Stars team who clamped down on their superstars, Chris Tanev, and otherwise those guys were solid. Jake Ottinger good at the times he needed to be. But the loss of Nichushkin combined with this team going 0 for 8 on the power play in games 2, 3, and 4, that's just not going to work when the Colorado Avalanche are an offensive juggernaut. When you don't play and you're the way that you're built to play, Steele, again, it might sound like a broken record, but these are the obvious things that led to this team's demise. Obviously, Nichushkin and the off and on ice distraction that was. That's massive. That obviously pissed some guys off. The quotes from the veterans and all of that, that's an angle. But just him not being on the ice when he's such a playoff performer and a goal-scoring stud also was just backbreaking when they weren't getting it done on special teams and they just weren't scoring goals in those games that the offense was just sputtering.
And they got outclassed in between the posts, in the blue paint. And no disrespect to Alexander Georgiev, but we've talked about this. He played the most amount of games in the regular season for the Colorado Avalanche. They had to rely on him. Even in the regular season, he was not the best. And so when you take into the factor, they're losing Valeri Nichushkin, who was just a pure dominance, a force to be reckoned with in front of the net, just banging away at rebounds and banging away at pucks. You take him out of the equation, and again, you look at what Alexander Georgiev done in the regular season, what he was doing in the postseason as well. I will say he did play his best, and he stood on his head in that do or die situation in Game 6. A .947 save percentage, 2 goals against on 38 shots or 38 shot attempts. But other than that, I mean, he just wasn't good enough. An .871 save percentage, an .879 save percentage, an .885 save percentage.
Yeah.
The team overall in front of him, defensively wasn't their best either from what we know they're capable of doing. But Alexander Georgiev has kind of shown us a little bit of the quality that you're going to get in the regular season and in the postseason. It's a consistent thing. It's not he's not bad, but he's not one of the greats. He's not one of the goaltenders that you're going to want really unless somehow he catches fire, which is possible. He's able to catch fire.
And we've seen that over the past couple of years in the playoffs, right? A random goalie comes out of nowhere and just wins it, like Aiden Hill. But I'm here for this take for sure.
But Jake Ottinger just played a way better game and played a way more
better goalie
in the series, and he's a better goaltender. So that, that's just what it came down to for me, honestly. Obviously, again, Nichushkin gets taken out, and wish him all the best. We hope he gets better. We hope he can really get back to.
It's still just unacceptable.
It's unacceptable. It's unacceptable. And I've already made my comments. I've already made my statements on what the Colorado Avalanche need to do. But he's still a human being. You want him to be his best and make sure he's.
But that was backbreaking for this team.
That was backbreaking. Crippling. It was heartbreaking because. Yeah. You could just tell from the team's perspective and the coaching's perspective that it crushed them because this is back-to-back years now.
His fantasy value is absolutely cooked. We're looking at Jake Ottinger, though, kind of putting some shine back onto his name after an up and down season. He's been solid throughout the postseason, and this is exactly what you and I have brought up before. Good playoff performances can really prop up a guy headed into next draft season. We just talked about Jeremy Swayman, but it can also bury it. I know Nichushkin's physically not going to be able to play. That's clear. But there are other players, Elias Pettersson, maybe he gets it done. I know he's been a little bit better, but, those situations, his draft stock's going down. Steele and I will continue to bring up all the fantasy angles that you need because draft prep season is right around the corner. We're here all summer long. Let me leave it at this for me anyway with the Colorado Avalanche, just back to the offense. They averaged 5.5 goals in the first round against the Jets, Steele, 2.5 in the second round. When you couple that with the lack of power play, you lose one of your biggest guys. That's just too much to overcome, even for a former reigning champion, only from a couple of years ago. And that's just it for me, Steele. I think maybe should we move on to this Edmonton Oilers situation? Because I think we're going to need a few minutes to talk about that. Big performance in Game 6. They answer a lot of haters because they couldn't get it done in Game 6's previous. That was a theme. I think last year they bowed out against Vegas in 6. They get it done. They get it done in a very big way. And I think when they play that game, Steele, and I know that's a big thing to have happen every single night in the playoffs, it's very clear who the better team is. And look at McDavid doing exactly what you said he needs to do, distributing, creating, and he could be scoring more goals. But I think when you're popping 3 or 4 assists per night, which he seems to be doing quite a bit this postseason, that happens and they win in a big way. Stuart Skinner, I think, by the way, only faced 16 shots or something.
15 shots for Stuart Skinner. And the thing was too, he allowed, I believe, the goal on one of the first 2 shots of the game. So at that point, I was like, oh God, here we go. Another barn burner of a game from both these goaltenders. Because it was already 1-1. And both goalies had only faced 2 or 3 shots in the first period at that point in the game. So I was like, it's going to be a high scoring barn burner of a game, but Edmonton kind of held down the fort.
Tease the bets. We got bets coming up at the end of the episode.
Tease the bets. We got bets coming up at the end of the episode. But Stuart Skinner only faced 15 shots. If they can continue to hold Vancouver to less than 20 shots, they have a really good chance of winning games because, again, they've got Connor McDavid, Evan Bouchard, Leon Draisaitl,
Hyman, Nugent Hopkins,
Zach Hyman, right? Nugent Hopkins, Evander Kane, Matthias Elk. So they're holding down the fort right now. We're going to continue this conversation. We're going to get to bets very soon. I'm just going to say this. Is it a hot take to maybe say that Evan Bouchard's a better defenseman than Quinn Hughes right now? Is it a hot take to say that? Because
I don't think it's a hot take. It's a bit bold, though.
It's bold, but Evan Bouchard is balling out right now. He is a playoff savant. We're going to continue this conversation after the break and then get to our same game parlays for this Game 7 between the Vancouver Canucks and Edmonton Oilers. But first, this episode is also brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to hit the subscribe, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. Flip and I appreciate all that love and support you show us Monday through Friday. 7 o'clock in the morning is when you can find our episodes. Flip, on to this, quickly, this hot take, bold take, if you will. I mean, Evan Bouchard is putting himself in a conversation to be with some of the elite young defensemen right now. I think he's already in that conversation, especially after the regular season, 80-plus points this year. He's a playoff, like I said, a playoff juggernaut, a playoff savant. I'm just going to bring it up right now. 44 points in 39 career playoff games. He's over a point per game player. He's a +2. Currently, right now in this postseason, he has 18 points in 11 games. He's a +10. He has been killing it, and that's exactly one of those other things that I've mentioned. Obviously, you want to get your goaltender hot. If you can get a streaky, hot goaltender, and he's just taking it from there and taking the reins, obviously that's a thing of beauty that every single team wants. But you also need a superstar quarterback, defenseman on your power play, on 5-on-5, playmaking, head manning the puck, joining the rush. He's got a rocket of a shot. Evan Bouchard just rips it on net, and he's got 5 goals this postseason as well. So, I mean, I'm not going to put him in the same tier as like Cale Makar, obviously, but he's in that conversation with Quinn Hughes, Miro Heiskanen, Cale Makar, even all these young, Charlie McAvoy. I know Charlie McAvoy doesn't bring the most upside offensive numbers up there, but he's still a great defenseman to have on your fantasy team or just team in general.
All of those D-men are. I would say Makar is 1A, and then I would put Hughes, and I would put Heiskanen, and I would put our boy there in that second tier right now, me personally.
100%.
However, their fantasy values is a different conversation as well.
Yes.
If we're just talking about straight on ice, maybe it's that way. Fantasy wise, you could throw them all into a conversation and have a serious debate about it. I would still probably lean to Makar and Hughes. However, how about this take, Steele? Evan Bouchard was 10th off the board the year he was drafted in 2018. Vitaly Kravtsov was drafted by the Rangers at 9. If Evan Bouchard was on the New York Rangers right now, along with the likes of all the other blue liners that they have, the Adam Foxes of the world, that Rangers team might be already have a couple of cups. Anyway, Evan Bouchard, look, the Edmonton Oilers score 5-on-5 goals in Game 6. Massive response. And I think what you saw was them really exercising their will in terms of playing their game. Their big guns go, they win games. This is another, I must sound like a broken record. I hope this still sounds good to everyone. But there you go, right? Being able to win on the road, special teams, and your best players performing. Look at even the examples of the teams that have gone out just this season, Leafs and otherwise. They weren't able to do any of those 3. McDavid goes off, and let me hit this for you. Draisaitl, 2 assists, give him 100 playoff points, Steele. In 60 games, only 2 other players have hit 100 points faster. You may have heard of them, Wayne Gretzky and Mario Lemieux. So Leon Draisaitl in the postseason is an absolute beast. If he goes and McDavid go in Game 7, I'm sorry, Canucks fans, you're not good enough. Arturs Silovs, huge shout out, great story. He looks like he can get it done at the NHL level. I'm intrigued to see what happens next season as he's the backup for Demko. He is not the guy to carry you to a Stanley Cup. Wake up. And when the Edmonton Oilers go like that, if he's back in the cage in Game 7, that one's cooked. Put the pink slips on Edmonton money line, tease the bets.
And who knows, maybe Thatcher Demko is game time decision, and maybe he gets in there for Game 7, like Tocchet was sort of alluding to.
Rick Tocchet never coached a Game 7, by the way. Obviously, Knobloch hasn't either, but Ricky Tocchet never been in a Game 7.
Hey, that's great to hear as well for both those coaches going into a Game 7 to start that kind of record on the right note. So maybe we just get over to big time bets right now if you're ready for that, Flip.
I'm ready.
Obviously, same game parlay, only 1 game on the schedule, the 1 Game 7 left. Vancouver Canucks, Edmonton Oilers. You said it off the top. Oilers money line. That's actually my lock of the night.
Minus 138.
They have struggled in Vancouver. Even in the regular season, they struggled against Vancouver. They struggled in Vancouver. But I mean, again, if they can continue to hold this team to less than 20 shots, less than 24, Stuart Skinner is capable of winning a game, even if he allows 2 or 3 goals, because the offensive side of things from the Oilers perspective is going to bang out just like it did in game 6. So my lock of the night is Oilers money line. My 2 player prop picks, McDavid anytime assist. And I'm also going with the Bouchard over 1.5 points in this matchup.
Whoa. Okay.
Bouchard's been killing it, man. He's got 18 points in 11 games. He's got
he's been sensational. You're going to get a good odd for that one too.
3 game-winning goals. He's got 5 goals in this postseason as well. 18 points, like I said, in 11 matchups. You're going to get a good odd for that. And again, this is going to be I believe, probably a barn burner of a game because of what you're getting right now from both Stuart Skinner and Arturs Silovs. Hey, but who knows? Maybe Demko's in the game.
A lot of intriguing storylines going into it. Mentioned the coaching, obviously the goaltending, because as much as I'm coming out here and talking about Arturs Silovs and the Canucks not being good enough, let's be clear that Stuart Skinner and Calvin Pickard aren't exactly the duo that you peg to carry a team to the cup either. But when you have McDavid and Draisaitl, it almost doesn't matter who's back there. As long as they're just above average, this team is now built back to front good enough to win the Stanley Cup. And in my opinion, Steele, if it's Oilers, the final 4 teams in this one are Oilers, Stars, and Florida and the Rangers, which obviously it's just one we're waiting for. Those are the 4 best teams in the NHL. Florida and New York are for sure the 2 best teams in the East. And I would say Dallas and Edmonton, maybe there's other conversations to be had about Colorado, maybe the Vegas Golden Knights. It's not as clear cut. In my opinion, Dallas, Edmonton, Florida, New York, those are the 4 best teams in the NHL, and it's very rare that it shakes out that way. So we're in store for a real beauty, especially if Oilers moneyline -138 hits for me as well, Steele. I'm going to the under 6.5. I know Edmonton pumped them 5-1. It's game 7. Things tighten up. You're getting 6.5 at -138, I think is very juicy. I understand that it's been over a couple of times in this series, actually more than a couple. However, I'm going under -138 and the lock of the night. Zach Hyman has 10 goals in the NHL postseason. That leads the NHL. I know he's getting fed the biscuit by McDavid. It's still 10 goals in the postseason. It's impressive. Zach Hyman anytime point is my lock of the night. That's going to give you a payout at +290, Steele. It might be hammer time on that one.
Hammer time indeed. You have been killing it as well with your bets, not just in the NHL, not just in the NHL, but
Sahith Theegala has a big Sunday here, Steele. I'm coming up and a night. We're renting a whip. We're going out in Muskoka for the night on me, pal.
On the lake, indeed. We'll get one of those speedboats and just absolutely rip.
That might be dangerous, but I'm down.
We're doing it if it bangs out. Hey, but the Xander Schauffele as well on round 1 was an absolute.
Like that one.
Oh, that was incredible. Let's continue.
I'll send you those next time before it happens. That's my bad.
I appreciate that. I appreciate the heads up potentially in the future.
That's my bad.
Those are all the bets. Those are the locks of the night. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Once again, go check out Locked On Sports Today. They're here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus the national shows covering every single league. Make sure you go subscribe to their YouTube channel. You can also subscribe to the Amazon Fire TV channel app. Check it out over there. And again, thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode with Flip and I. Have a great day. Good luck with all your bets out there. And we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Peace.